And if you're joining us today for the Scoop on Life podcast, we are actually going to be having a conversation today with some of my old friends who have pursued foster care, which then led to adoption. And so we're with Bradley and Sarah Pinkerton today, and just excited to have this conversation. I know last week in some of our conversation, Chase, when we talked with Jordan and Mary, we talked about foster care, but we wanted to lean in a little bit as well to other families who have fostered and then led to adoption.
Yeah, and Bradley and Sarah have fostered and now they have adopted as well. So Bradley and Sarah, first of all, thanks for taking time with us, and tell us a little bit about y'all's journey through foster care and now adoption.
Yeah, so it started out where we kind of got to a place in life where things had settled down enough that we were thinking about starting our family and thinking about pursuing foster care. We'd seen other families do it. We knew that there was a big need in our community, and we ended up getting a new rental house that had an extra room, and so some of it was just practical. We have this space. How can we use that extra room in our house for God's glory? And so we contacted our local DHR and started taking the classes and became licensed. And our first placement was our daughter, who's now adopted, and we've had her for her whole life since birth, and her adoption was finalized when she was 2. And then since then, we've also had lots of other kids come. There's been different situations. Some have been reunified with their birth families, which was really cool. We've been able to have some sibling group sets, and then we've had opportunities with a medically fragile foster son who ended up passing away in our home on hospice. So getting to love him through that. And then also had some experiences with teenagers that's been cool as well through foster care. So it's just kind of been a bigger journey than we ever imagined it to be, but it's been really cool to just see how the Lord has opened doors as we've kind of gone along.
Yeah,
so
good.
I was really I was surprised how simple the process was. You know, we just simply contacted our local county DHR. They contacted us. They said show up for 10 weeks. And before we knew it, we had a child in our home. And of course, that was the first child in our home. And so I remember seeing baby toys and cribs come in and being totally unexpected and unprepared for that. I think we can say unprepared for that. But the Lord gave grace moment by moment. And we've had 8 placements now over the past. Our daughter's 3.5. We had her from birth. So we've been doing 3.5, I guess 4 years if we include the application time. And never really expected to do what the Lord's given opportunity for us to do over that time.
So you mentioned you had that spare bedroom. You wanted to use that for God's glory. You got into foster care. When you got into foster care, did y'all want to go into adoption, or was that just kind of something that happened?
Yeah, it kind of just happened. We, of course, loved our daughter very much and wanted whatever outcome, wanted to support her and her birth family and whatever outcome that would be. And it ended up that she would need a forever home. It was just really natural for her to stay, and we were really excited for her to officially be our daughter, but then there's also great grief there, you know, with biofamily not being a long-term. There's just lots of different emotions there, but so it wasn't really, we were open to adoption when we started, but we kind of started just to foster as our main goal, I guess you could say. And then as the Lord's opened up adoption, it's been kind of a just continuation of that.
I feel like that's probably something that people that might be considering foster care and adoption ask, you know, what does your relationship as foster parents look like with the birth family? Like, do you as 2 believing individuals have opportunity to minister to and love and talk to the birth families?
Yes, there have been lots of opportunities, and that's been really cool, like whether it's sending pictures of the child to visits, really just showing the birth family that you love them and care about them, and support them and honoring them through loving their child, just helping them know that you're on their same team. I heard a quote one time that said foster care is more about bringing your family to a child than it is getting a child for your family. And I think that's been true kind of for our situation as well.
But I think that's a great question, Lauren. I think a lot of times it's easy to view ourselves as the saviors and biological family as the culprits. Yeah. And that is simply not true. Neither of those are true. Sarah and I are not saviors. Sarah and I are not wonderful people or special people by any means. We are sinners saved by the grace of God, but still being sanctified for sure. And so by no means do we walk into this situation imagining that we are these perfect family or perfect parents for these children. On the contrary, we know we're not. And by the same token, we know that these biological parents are sinners just like we are, but who love their children deeply. We have known significant information about the biological family of all 8 of our placements, and all of them, without exception, have deeply loved their children. And I think that it's important for us to recognize, Lauren, that the difference between us and a lot of these biological parents is largely one of privilege, not one of righteousness. And I think we have to be honest about that fact, that a lot of these people come from really, really hard situations. And many children in foster care come from parents who themselves were in foster care. Many of them come from situations of cyclical poverty and poor educational backgrounds and all of the sorts of sad realities that a fallen world means that these children will inevitably be those who bear the brunt of this kind of sin. And so in unfortunate circumstance. And so I think it's a great question to ask. And we have been able to minister to biological parents in really significant ways. Our goal is for the welfare of the children. And so there have been children who needed homes, permanent homes, forever homes. And it's been our joy to adopt two children whose situations clearly necessitated a new and permanent and forever home. But there have also been situations where we have advocated for these children to return to biological family, where biological families simply needed help. They needed time to heal and to restore and to get back on their feet. And so it was our delight to help them do that as well. And so I think we have to view these children as we should all children, whether our children, our biological children, our adopted children, children with us in foster care, that these children are the Lord's children for as long as they will be with us. And our goal is for their welfare.
Well, and I think that's encouraging, to hear you say that too, that I think once you said that, I'd never really thought about it that way, but I think sometimes it is our tendency to look at, these children that are in foster care, and it's like, well, what did their parents do to have them be put in foster care, and like you said, view the fostering family as the savior of the situation, and then just have a negative connotation toward that birth family, when really the likelihood is, like you said, Bradley, they're probably hurting, struggling. And so to say, what is our response as Christians to that? It's obviously not just a hands-off approach. I don't think that's right. And so that's interesting to hear you say. Bradley and Sarah, considering where we live in the South, and where being pro-life can often mean voting that way, or just simply maybe being anti-abortion, to then thinking about families like you all who are in foster care and adoption, where being pro-life extends outside of the womb. And we've talked about this on our podcast some before, but I just want to ask you guys, in what ways have you seen in the South, even maybe more, but the white evangelical church serve you well? Maybe it's your local church, or maybe just on a broader level. In what ways do you see the church, maybe even global or nationally, need to grow in this area of not, when we say we're pro-life, it's not just caring about the unborn, but to say, how are we caring or not caring for those in foster care?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Um, I feel like the church as a whole, I think not everyone is called to be a foster parent, but the church is called to support orphans and widows in their distress. And I think distress is messy. It's not going to be like tidy. It's not going to be a Pinterest project.
Right.
Foster care is anything but that when you enter into trauma and brokenness and, as scripture says, distress. And so I think the church needs to be willing to enter into messy situations. I think we've been really blessed by people who have loved us well through meals, through prayer, through practical service like cutting our grass or helping provide a shopping trip for our teenage girl, or really just sharing their families with our kids, like school-age kids sharing their school-age kids and having them over for a play date, really just supporting them like you would any other children in any other family. I think some of the sad things have been, we talk so much about being pro-birth and pro-life, and especially our infants that we've had, there's just not a lot of joy around them entering the world. Sometimes the circumstances are more sad circumstances or unplanned, things like that, but still a life has entered the world. God's created a new person. And I think even in the way we welcome and greet new children, instead of with our infants, it's been greetings in the church of, oh, like, is this your new baby? Are they developmentally delayed? Or, other new babies in the church getting tons of attention and tons of baby showers, whereas our infants have never, ever had a baby shower. I think just simple, being excited, being, oh, they're so beautiful, oh, they're so cute, rather than, are they developmentally delayed? Was their mom on drugs? Like, stop the questions and just be excited about a life and celebrate them, and show that through gifts and through encouragement and through, let's play together. Let's just joy about the life of a child, I think is really the biggest thing that's been kind of the saddest and most frustrating.
Yeah.
Stop looking at our children as a statistic or stereotype, and look at them as an image bearer of God.
And I think those who have supported best have been people with that. People who really celebrate these children have had no shortage of ideas or opportunities in how to help or support foster families. Like, there's no secret sauce to it. We all know what it means to delight and love in children. And so if you come with that choice and that perspective, then there is no shortage of that. And conversely, if you do not truly delight in these children, then you're not going to serve or love or help in the ways that you should. If you want to throw some money or throw out ideas or send something on social media, that's fine, but that's not really the heart of Christ's call to love the vulnerable, the widow, the orphan, the sojourner, and the poor, all of whom we've seen in foster care.
I think a second thing that comes to mind as far as the church's role, I think seeing foster care as a gospel endeavor, seeing it as a worthwhile mission field. Like, we support missionaries overseas. We see that, we get that, we're excited about that. But then I think we've kind of felt the vibe with foster care of people of the church kind of like, well, like, this is your thing that you've taken on. This is your hobby. This is, you've taken on this responsibility, and you're going to kind of have to figure it out and deal with it. And I think we need to have a viewing it as a mission, because the government's literally saying, here's a child and here's a family that needs love, and here they are loving them. So why wouldn't we, Well,
I think that would probably really help, even just as you think about your local body. So I think about where we go to church, if we viewed families that we know, whether in our immediate body or not, as, like you said, this is a mission. This is something that God has called this family to do. And as you said, Sarah, foster care isn't for everyone. So for somebody like me and Chase, if we don't feel like God has called us to foster care, right now, to say, well, let's look around and see who is on this mission of foster care and adoption. How can we love and serve them? And we've talked before too, just how it wasn't really till we had family in a fostering situation that I really thought about these things. And so it's convicting to hear that, I've spent 25 years of my life not viewing it this way, like, okay, that's important, but it's probably not for me. Okay, well, you have responsibility to do something probably, as far as, is there people in the church that aren't in that situation? And one thing I thought about, this is not a question, Bradley and Sarah, but one thing that I was just thinking through, and Chase, we could probably talk with someone on the podcast at a later date, but you talked about how foster care is hard, and when we have the call to care for widows and orphans in their distress, that's really revealing about the situation, but then I could see how maybe people that are pro-choice would then advocate for abortion as a result of the messiness and the issues, I guess, for lack of a better word, that are around the foster care system. So that'd be interesting to have a gospel-centered conversation about that. And y'all may have thought through that before too, like, are people advocating for abortion as a result of what we're talking about? And so how do we as gospel people think about those things? Like, yeah, foster care is really hard, and it's a system that is difficult to walk through with grace and with all involved, but yet that doesn't mean that if a child will be born, as you said, Sarah, this infant is going to be born and then immediately placed in the foster care system, we don't advocate for the loss of life as a result.
Yeah. I think that's spot on. I think if we preach a pro-life message and are unwilling to bear the responsibility of life, we are hypocrites.
And that's right. And that's and Bradley, maybe you could speak on that just a second more, to say we're hypocrites. Are you saying in regards to say, like, okay, we hear about the unborn, but Sarah, when that infant is born, well then, okay, I hope it has a good life, basically.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like if I'm not willing to stay up through the night changing the diapers of a baby who I insisted should be born, then I'm a hypocrite. If I'm not willing to see a life in a severely disabled child and even consider how I may be part of loving that child, then I'm a hypocrite. And I think one more thing I wanted to say, Lauren, as well, slightly related, slightly not, about foster care is I think it's been helpful for me to think about foster care as, in its essence, as an expression of gospel hospitality. The Bible talks a lot about hospitality, and I think that the predominant scriptural reference to hospitality is to the vulnerable stranger. That is really, I think, the core of it. We think about hospitality in terms of having church groups or friends over, and I think that's legitimate. Romans 12 says, show hospitality to one another. And so showing hospitality to those in the body of Christ is absolutely part of the hospitality. But far more often, in the Old Testament and New, we see a picture of hospitality being opening up your home, your wallet, your friendships, your schedule to people who are severely in need and who can never pay you back. Jesus tells parable after parable to precisely that effect, that you ought to choose the low place. You ought to go after those who can never pay you back, precisely because they can never pay you back. And in doing so, that is hospitality. And so foster care in that sense, I think, is distinct from adoption, though, of course, adoption, you could say, is the ultimate hospitality, right, of having a forever home for a child. But I think hospitality is there to welcome the stranger, the vulnerable stranger, to fill them with whatever they need for as long as they need it, and to empower them in their life. And so foster care is one of the greatest expressions of true biblical hospitality. That's
awesome. And we would encourage you, if you're listening to this, as we need to do, to pray fervently and ask the Lord, Lord, what would you have us do? Is that foster care? And if not, Bradley, as you said, how can we open our homes, our wallets, our friendships to those who are serving in that role?
Yeah, absolutely. Bradley and Sarah Pinkerton, thank you for your heart. Thank you for what you do. And thanks for taking time and sharing your journey with us here tonight.
It's been our pleasure. Blessings to you guys.